This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so when you're having this belief, when you're having one that's not great, the first thing you have to do is calm your brain down, because if you're not calm, any of these resilience techniques are not going to work. So this is where we go back to week 3 when we talked about the breathing. And understand that when you're stressed, you do not have access to your prefrontal cortex. And so one of the things that Dan Siegel likes to say is you're flipped. If this is your brain, when you have when you've gone to amygdala hijack, you're flipped, right? And you can't access this rational part of your brain. So you have to get your the lower part of your brain back into a safe state. Okay, that can be mindfulness, connecting with your senses, the breathing, counting, but that's what we want to do. So recognizing you can't do anything about it. Now, there's 3 sentences we're going to work on. And real-time resilience is you're understanding your mind chatter. You've got that down. You understand your mind chatter is throwing out some beliefs that are not helpful, right? And you're going to what we call hit back with a talk back sentences. And so when it's a why belief or a judger thought, like you're judging or you're wondering why something has happened, the 2 sentences you want to be able to say is that's not true because, or another way of seeing that is, right? So when you catch yourself, and a lot of times this can be internal, this belief, you say that's not true because. So we're gonna practice with this in just a minute. Now, when you're worrying about the future, one of the exercises I like to do is the most likely outcome. And I start and I say, okay, what's the worst thing that can happen? And we go from the worst thing, okay, well, then what happens then? And what happens then? And I take them to their age all the way homeless, right? You know, you're living on the street, no friends, no family there, okay? And then I say, okay, what's the best thing that can happen in this situation? And I take them to where they're like on the Oprah show winning a car, right? Like these things are not likely, right? And it's a very, you know, and we look at the probabilities from one event to the next. And then we talk about what's the most likely outcome. And in some ways, you have dumped all of your worst fears that you couldn't say onto a page like, you know, I'm going to fail stats. I'm going to be kicked out of this program. Then I'm not going to have a job. And then I'm not going to be able to provide for myself. You know, when none of that's really true, and it won't happen in that event. So anyway, so another way is when it's a worry thought, you say the most likely outcome is, and I can do what? So you want to listen to your mind chatter and start to notice when you're like, I'm this, I'm that, he, she thinks I am, right? I heard a great say it's none of your business what somebody else thinks about you. It's not your problem. I'll never, I always, he, she always. Whenever we're making these types of statements, we want to start to pay attention in our mind that it's really taking us to a place and to some beliefs that aren't helping. So you want to practice these talk back statements and talk back to your mind chatter. Okay, so we're going to get back with our practice with a partner. We're going to pick an adversity that generates a lot of B's for you, a lot of beliefs that are not helpful. So try to pick some that are not helpful. Tell your partner the gist of the thoughts you have, and the partner will repeat the B's to you one at a time, and you'll hit back with one of the statements. That's not true, the most likely outcome, another way of seeing it. And you just use one. So it might seem kind of awkward, but what you're doing is you're saying, I believe something. And the person says it back to you, and then you say that's not true because, or one of these statements. So try to do 3 or 4 per person. So you do with one partner and then switch. And online, you guys can go back to your private chat.
This conference will now be recorded.
I'm going to bring us back and ask, okay, what was that experience like of hitting back? I'm like, I love that tennis racket. Like you just like the ball's coming at you and you're hitting it with a tennis racket. What was that like?
So for me, I felt like it definitely put it in perspective for me because with one to finishing 3 years and the whole dissertation process, and Cody, right? Cody was just like, well, don't let it sit on the brain too much. Just have this, go through life, read your articles, and whatever you're interested in, it'll just show up. And he gave an example of how it showed up for him and what he, was interested in. I was like, oh, that, and so instead of looking at it as this is something that needs to be done, like it will get done if maybe if you don't concentrate on it as much.
So which
not dissertation, talking about white paper.
Yeah.
Make sure.
Okay, oh wait,
Different
paper.
levels,
right,
yeah.
but so what was the statement that you used, like to hit back with the belief?
The second one, I can't remember the second one.
Another way of seeing this
Another way
is,
of seeing it.
all right, perfect.
Because he
So,
was saying, he's like, no, I worry about maybe not finding the right dissertation. And I related it to like the white paper, which I was struggling to find an idea for the white paper for PD. And I said, I just started reading articles I was interested in, like whether it was positive psychology. And I knew if I put the work in the times I at least expected, because for your mind to be creative, it needs to be relaxed. And so when I was telling them like that, I was like, if you think about it and you stress it, you're not gonna let your mind be as creative as it can be. And so we kind of just talked about that. It's not that it won't get happen. Is what can you do to ensure that it does happen by filling your brain up with thoughts and giving yourself the luxury to be creative.
right, and it sounds like you're kind of dipping back into self-efficacy from last week, where if you're and a little bit of hope too, like if you're just doing the next step in front of you and you continue going and you have this confidence, there's going to be an outcome.
Right.
Right.
I think I really fell in love with the pathways.
I know, me too. I love
really
it.
did.
Right. Anybody else? Was it easy to hit back with the statements? No. No. Yes. Yeah. So I didn't mention the gut test, but Carly called me on one. I did one and I made a face, and then she was like, "What's the gut test?" And I was like, "Yeah, that first one didn't pass it, did it?" Right. So I did. I said something back, and I was like, trying to hit back, and it wasn't very authentic. So you really need to feel it, and you have to believe that, believe it's true. Okay. Oh, and Elaine says she liked how positive they were, and it was fun to use the statement.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Elaine. Okay. So when to use this skill? When you know the thought is a pessimistic thought. Always, everything, never, judgments, worst case scenario thinking. Start with these as a practice. I love this picture. So what happens is most of us don't take time to question our mind chatter. We actually believe that it's true. So your mind is just throwing out these random thoughts. Remember, they're just random neural impulses, and we think it's true. And there's this bumper sticker I love. I think I mentioned it, and for those of you that are repeating the class, you don't have to believe every thought you have, right? So sometimes we also don't realize that the things that we say to ourselves, we would never be that mean, cruel, judgmental, or pessimistic towards others, but we talk that way to ourselves, and that does make a difference. Okay, so it's a fast skill. It's something that you learn to do in the moment, but it takes a slow time to develop. Again, mindfulness and meditation to me are the key to get to understanding your mind chatter, so that you have that gap, so that you can slow down to analyze the belief. Otherwise, we're just caught in the trap. But the result is that it will help you become more flexible and accurate in your thinking. It decreases the potency of negative emotions through realistic statements. So a lot of times these negative feelings we have just aren't realistic, but we believe they are. And it increases the experience of neutral and positive emotions and helps people become more resilient and better able to bounce back from adversity. Okay, so what I want to ask is that you take one of these statements and the mind chatter and work on, spend 1 minute, maybe in the beginning of your day or end of your day, kind of analyzing your mind chatter and either hitting back or using one of the sentences or understanding the belief in your mind chatter, right? So 1 minute a day next week, and I'll send out a blog on it to remind you as well. And that is it. So we have, I'm going to end the recording.